Excerpt 4. Paradox. In progress. You are entering into what is called in process. This means you will change a little every day for the better. The changes are almost imperceptible at first, but become more noticeable as you progress. This is the beginning of what you have hoped and waited for on some level of your being, since the beginning of your sojourn into physical manifestation. It is a spectacular event, probably far beyond your present comprehension, but it needs time to mature. When you first created your present time on this time track, you were unable to study the material on this website because it did not exist then. The material contained here was written by you, for you, from outside of time as you presently understand it. What is happening to you is utterly different than what happened to you originally. You have already begun to change the past. It is by no means easy. You will need all of the help and encouragement you can get. This is the beginning for us. We are the pioneers that people 1,000 years from now will be grateful to for having paved the way. Tremendous karma. Tremendous karma in the form of magnetic force will try to pry you away from these studies in order to bring you back into the original time loop. These forces are neither good or evil. They are simply a built-in maintenance system that mindlessly repairs and keeps your illusions intact. We are in a cosmic playpen spiraling around and around in the illusion of time. We have been doing this for a very long time, and without intervention, we will probably continue to do it for a very long time, possibly forever. What we, as time travelers, are doing has nothing to do with what was happening in this present time frame. As you begin to look at this time from years or eons in the future, you will understand its quaintness. Let's continue our investigation of the third dimension. We need to delve into our 3D world a little more deeply so we can compare it with the fourth dimension. In review, we established that the third dimension is outward facing, or 6 directions of out from a common center. 6 directions of out are actually 4 directions of side to side, with the additional dimension of time as forward motion, which brings into being the concept of future, past, or breadth. Contrary to beliefs held in this time period, going in the direction of higher vibrations still belong to the realm of the third dimension and not the fourth. This is because vibration as motion starts from the void in the first dimension and accumulatively processes upward in vibration until the sum total of all vibration is accrued. For those of you who are students of astrology, this outward motion was understood by the ancients as the fundamental nature of Aries, color red, which represents the third dimension as forward or outward motion. What we now think of as forward time is also the property of the third dimension, contrary to popular scientific opinion, and not to the fourth dimension, which is backward or inward motion, backward time. It is important that we establish the difference between the third and fourth dimensions, because this was a major point of confusion for spiritual students during this time period. We can start by stating that the fourth dimension is equal and opposite to the third dimension. It is a mirror image in the purest sense. Every equal aspect is inside out, upside down, and backwards from one another. They perfectly counterbalance each other. They are the two opposite halves of one thing. They are the same place from opposite viewpoints. A good example of this in our everyday world is male and female. Another good example of interaction with this principle in human beings is the right and left lobes of the brain. A little time spent comparing elements of the third and fourth dimensions is in order at this point. These distinctions have to be absolutely clear before we can venture onto the fifth dimension. We have established that the third dimension has 6 directions of out. This would mean that the fourth dimension would have to have 6 directions of in. If we tunnel into the earth, that would certainly seem to be going a direction of in, but as soon as we pass the center of the earth, our direction becomes out once again. The direction of in is really a direction of through, which is actually another direction of out. Another way of looking at this, using the Earth example, would be to imagine the Earth disappearing while tunneling into it. It then becomes obvious that you were really moving in a forward motion, which is another direction of out. We simply do not have the ability in our three-dimensional reality to move in a true inward direction. The three-dimensional viewpoint is from a single point to all directions of out. In order to simulate a 4D viewpoint, we would have to establish a viewpoint coming from everywhere, converging upon a single point. To help you do this, imagine yourself as coming from everywhere in space, looking inward toward a single point of white light at your very center. As you converge in upon this point from all directions, you are moving in a direction of in. This concludes our exercises for now. Next time we will progress a little further in our understanding of the dimensions. Excerpt 5. Introduction to the Dynamics of Time. At the very beginning of this creative cycle, at the moment of creation, all that came into being was created perfectly. Creation has no other choice than to be perfect. The puzzle is created by the pieces, and the pieces are each created by the puzzle. Perfection is an amazingly dynamic, ever-changing state, rather than the static unchanging state of being that is usually ascribed to it. The problem is, although creation happened instantaneously, there is a relative time factor inherent within that instant. The instant of time it took for creation to achieve a state of perfection has become all of time as we normally perceive it. That instant, relative to infinite time, can be virtually any length, depending upon the viewpoint of the observer. Multidimensional universe. In order to understand the dynamics of time, we need to have, at least, a minimal understanding of the multidimensional universe we live in. We as human beings are at present concerned with, at least, 5 separate dimensions. We may think that we are not aware of some of them, but we actually work within them all of the time. Or reflections of them. We are most aware of the third dimension because it is our physical universe we see all around us. This makes us, basically, three-dimensional beings. However, we are aware of the fourth dimension also, because it is reflected through our emotions. A reflection of the fifth dimension is experienced with our minds. Each dimension has its own time. We are most familiar with three-dimensional time, because we conduct our affairs by it. We are aware of the now, the future and the past. As was stated in Excerpt 3, present time reality, as a continuous now, becomes the past as it moves into the future, and assumes a new position for us, in the present. This is three-dimensional time. Notice that it only goes in the direction of the future, but is always the now. In three-dimensional time, we have no means of reclaiming the past, nor do we ever actually experience the future. Time for us is always the present, in forward motion. The fourth dimension is an emotional and spiritual labyrinth for us, and is in every way equal and opposite to the third dimension. One of those opposites is time. Where the third dimension moves into the future, the fourth dimension retreats into the past. An avatar-less age. Contrary to popular millenarianism beliefs, people who believe in the impending return of Jesus, and 1,000 years of enlightenment, known as the Millennium, or Golden Age, the age we are about to begin, is avatar-less, leaderless, in that the return of the Christ is in mass. And as such, is a lesson that must be learned individually. This is the reason that no man can predict the exact time of his return, because it is different for each individual. And is also the reason so many people believe that they are Jesus. It is available to everyone who can master the lesson of this age, which will last 2,000 years, at which time the Yellow Age will begin, which will last for 2,000 years. The avatar for that age will also be a Christ-conscious being, whose life will portray lessons of abstract mentality.